Which tank is better, the Challenger 2 or the M1 Abrams? So we have this oil-guzzling mate proudly in America, armored and extremely sexy fighting machine, against Her Majesty's finest tea-sipping defender of the red-coated bushy-hatted men. Let's compare some statics. M1 Abrams, German gun, British armor, and Belgian beer. Yes, this sounds very American. Now, on the other hand, Challenger 2, British gun, British armor, British tea. This could turn out to be rather close match of extreme doom. Well, enough said. Let's get the game started. The answer will probably depend on your nationality. As a former American tanker, I prefer the Abrams, and can tell you the reliability of the turbine is far greater than any tank engine I've ever seen. I did get the chance to evaluate the Charlie in a joint event, and it would be my next choice in a moment. The Charlie rides better than Abrams, but is less comfortable and more cramped inside. I prefer the smooth bore on the Abrams, and the powertrain was far less reliable in practice than the turbine on our much older M1s, despite the fact on average the Charlies seemed much better cared for and maintained by their crews than ours were. Crews were often serving on the same tank 5 years, which is unheard in the US military. The Abrams sprints much better, forget about the max speed. That's nonsense in battle. What's important is how fast you can get from one piece of cover to the next one, and no tank accelerates like an Abrams, with the exception of the T-18. That being said, on the same piece of rough terrain, at the same speed, the Challenger is a nicer place to be. As a tanker, I am really glad that the UK is our steadfast ally, bound by history and culture, and there is no realistic scenario where we would need to come to arms again. They did not widely export the Challenger 2, only Oman got a handful. This means that an American Abrams will never have to face a Challenger 2. To find out the answer here, if a Challenger 2 comes into conflict with one of our exported M1s crewed by Iraqis, Saudis or Egyptians, I fully expect to see a dead M1 and the Charlie crew enjoying a fresh cup of tea from the internal hot water boiler. Also, it depends on the rounds you are firing at the tank. If you're firing KE kinetic energy rounds, the Challenge is better armored, while if you were to fire heat or HE rounds, the Abrams would hold out better. Both tanks saw service in Iraq. A large amount of Abrams damaged and knocked out is usually used to prove the Abrams' protection inferior, but the US was in Iraq a lot longer with more tanks. Just probability. With the Street Fighter upgrade, the Charlie 2 gets hell of a lot of add-on protection, similar, probably better than Tusk 1. But the tank gets heavy, 75 tons heavier. The Abrams also has blowout panels, which prevents an ammo detonation from destroying the tank. The Challenger does not have this, and the effects can be seen in the incident when a Challenger 2 was destroyed by friendly fire. The hit detonated the ammo and threw off the turret. Now for the firepower, both tanks have 120mm guns, but the Challenger 2 does have the longer gun and better muzzle velocity. But it has a problem, the gun uses 3-part ammunition, which limits the length of its penetrators. This means the Challenger 2 has less penetration on its APFSDS than its NATO counterparts. The Charlie will have some serious trouble penning tanks like T-19 or T-72B3. The Abrams won't. The round M8, 29A3 and A4 are specifically designed to defeat a heavy area on these tanks. The US has tested them at least on Connacht 5. As for the FCSS, both are similar, both have 100 killer capabilities. From what I can see, the sight and firing methods for both tanks are very similar. The Abrams might have better zoom with 15 times more, but I can't find any good numbers on the Charlie, so nothing really there. Now the Abrams gets knocked off for being fat and underpowered, despite the fact that Abrams has a higher top speed than the T-19. The Challenger 2 weighs about 7 to 10 tons more, but has 300 less horsepower. This kinda makes the Challenger 2 sluggish. Sorry it does. The Abrams is still pretty heavy. but it gets good horsepower, excellent torque, and higher acceleration from its AGT 1500 gas turbine engine. The Honeywell AGT 1500 is a gas turbine engine. It is main power plant of the M1 Abrams series of tanks. Engine output peaks at 1500 horsepower. But why does Abrams have a jet engine? Probably to achieve high mobility. Gas turbine engines have a much better power to weight ratio than reciprocating engines. The low weight, high power turbine engine lets the M1 move faster and maneuver better than the most comparable tanks. So when we sum up everything, however the Challenger 2 does get better range, in my opinion the M1 just edges the Challenger 2 out. While a heavy up armored Challenger 2 might do better all around protection, its front is no better than the Abrams and Tusk makes up ground. Due to poor ammo choice, the Challenger 2 can't fire the new rounds needed to take on modern tanks, unlike Abrams. The Abrams is also faster and more maneuverable.